Hello, my beautiful people. My name's Elijah, and welcome back to my channel. So, today I'm going to be talking about the loneliness epidemic. I know this is a topic that I've seen floating around YouTube quite a bit in the last few months, and I think it's a really interesting subject. So, I think we should dive deep into it. But I just want to talk about it from a slightly different lens. So I hope you guys like this. And without further ado, let's just get started. I think it's because there's a lot more people that have access to all this self-improvement, information, but also they just have access to it and they're taking advantage of it. So a lot of people are going through say spiritual awakenings or self-love journeys and just self-discovery journeys. So people are discovering who they are much younger. Cause I when you listen to older people talk, they're always saying how let's say when they were younger, they had a lot of friends, high school, college, uni, they had a lot of friends. And then over time, as they grew up, the friends just kind of dropped off. They just stopped having people around them. But it's because as you're growing up, you're discovering yourself and you're changing so much. And sometimes the people who are in your life in the moment just don't fit in your life anymore. And that's okay. You know what I mean? That's okay. You don't have to stay attached to people that just don't resonate with you anymore. So I think for us, that's happening a lot sooner because of all the information that we have online and everything we have access to, we're just getting to that point of self-discovery a lot faster than say our parents did. So that's why you have a lot of people that are that maybe have friends or are in situations and they just don't feel connected to it because there is a disconnect. When you work on yourself, not everything's going to be for you. So there's going to be a disconnect between what you were able to do before versus where you're at now. So maybe it won't feel the same. You won't feel as connected as you once did. And again, that's okay. But I think for a lot of us too, especially when it comes to friendships, because when you hear a lot of people talking about, friendships and stuff like that, at least I did growing up, where it's your friend is supposed to be your ride or die. This is supposed to be your person. They're supposed to just get you. And sometimes you don't even need to say a word and they just understand. And, they're just supposed to fulfill and check off all these boxes for you. And I think one thing I've discovered over time is that I cannot expect that from every single friend that I have. So I just have learned to be more accepting of people with where they're at in life and also where they've developed to and just taking it for what it is. So this is my take on the whole situation. When it comes to friendships or just people I keep in my life, they have to serve a purpose. And I have a list of negotiables and non-negotiables. So some things I'm willing to put up with and it's not the best thing, but it's also not the worst. And then there are other things that I'm you know what? Absolutely not. If someone displays these traits, I'm out because I'm not willing to put up with it. So with coming to that conclusion of having a visual list of what I'm willing to put up with versus what I'm not willing to put up with, just allowed me to kind of know who I could keep around me versus who I couldn't keep around me because it just wouldn't work. I can now have friends that just maybe fulfill one purpose, and then maybe I'll have a closer friend that fulfills everything that I need. But sometimes maybe I'll have someone that fulfills just two things that I need. And it's obviously the same vice versa. I don't expect one person to be able to do everything for me or to fulfill everything for me. I don't have that high of an expectation that I put on the friendships that I have. Let's say I have some friends that I'll literally talk to once every few months, sometimes once every 6 months, sometimes even once a year. And we're still close. That's still my friend. but we don't need to talk to each other all the time. When we get back on the phone and talk to each other, everything's great. If I see them in person, everything's great. But then I also have friends that like I'll talk to almost every day. And I get that. Like for some people that would be annoying, but for me, I don't mind. I love spending time with my friends, but I also understand that's something that my friend needs from me. And that's something I'm also willing to give to them. I'm willing to spend that extra time with them to make them feel loved and appreciated. And that's my way of showing that. But all to say is that you can't expect to have like this idea of like this is the perfect friend and every single friend that I have needs to check all these boxes. While that's great, chances are not every single person in your life is going to check all those boxes, and you need to learn to be okay with that. You need to know how to put people in categories and know, okay, this is the person for this. If I need this, I go to this person. If I want to have a good time, I'll go see this person. If I want to have a deep conversation, I'll go see this person. And that's okay. But I think that's something that's not being talked about enough is how much, I guess, pressure that we put either on ourselves and or our friends to fulfill these different roles in our lives. And that's simply not necessary. You can have people that satisfy different needs for you, and it doesn't all have to be found in one person. So, another reason I think we might have this loneliness epidemic is this idea of basically this hustle culture. I think in recent times, or maybe it's always been a thing, I don't know. I've just been noticing it a lot more in the past maybe decade or so. There's this like culture that's like, that puts so much pressure on output and just achieving things. And it's like this constant cycle of like, you have to constantly achieve, you have to constantly produce, you have to constantly just be working. It's like a workaholic society that doesn't value enough of people, just mental health. I know a lot of times there's been a lot of talk about mental health and, just being okay with yourself and all that stuff. And I understand that. But when it comes down to it, is our mental health truly being valued? I just don't think so. It's simply not. Because even when you're scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever, you have so many videos of just people telling you how, different ways you can be making passive income, different ways to like start a business. Everyone should be a business owner. You're a dumbass if you don't want to work for yourself. There's just so much of this messaging, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, what are they really pushing on us? You know what I mean? So if you're constantly in this mentality of like, go, 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 like you have to achieve all the time, it's just a nonstop thing where like, if you're sitting down doing nothing, it's like, oh, you're being lazy. You could have been doing something. You could have achieved this had you actually put in the work. They don't value, our society doesn't really value rest and just, taking a moment for yourself. Because how many times have you done something where it's like, let's say you've been at work or at school or something, you've just been busy, and then you take a moment to yourself and you actually feel guilty? Because I remember feeling this way when the pandemic happened, because at that point, prior to that point, I'd always been either like working or like working and going to school or going to school and working at the same time. I was just constantly overly busy. And I didn't even realize how drained I was and how burnt out I was until the pandemic hit. So essentially, I went from constantly working and constantly being in school and just constantly being busy to all of a sudden having nothing to do. And that was very hard. That was very mentally difficult because all of a sudden that you have nothing to do, or it feels like you have nothing to do, and you just feel guilty. You feel like you're wasting your time. You can't even fully rest because your mind can't shut off because you're constantly running with these ideas of what you could be doing, what you should be doing, and how you're not doing enough of that. So factor that into an already digital world that pulls us further apart from each other because we're all mostly living online, let's be real. We spend most of our time scrolling through our phones. And then, even while you're working or at school, you have quite a bit of that that's remote. So, when you factor all those things in and just never feeling like you can really get to just rest, like just you can never get to prioritize your rest because everything else comes before that, that's going to amplify any negative feelings that you're having. So those feelings of loneliness just seem like this huge thing, so much bigger than they are. But also, how are you supposed to show up as your best for both yourself, your friends, your family, if you're not even fully well rested? And that just contributes so much more into this loneliness because it's really a vicious circle. You'll never get to like fully meet people and fully be yourself if you're constantly running on this adrenaline and this stress, and then you're not making friends and you're stressed and you can't meet other people because you're stressed, and it's just a huge thing. But overall, like, I think that's a big part of it is how much society keeps pushing us to constantly overproduce, and we're not valuing rest enough, which means that every other aspect of our lives, especially our mental health, is just suffering and declining because of that. And most of the time, when people are suffering from mental health or having any kind of mental health crisis, typically the response is to retreat within yourself. You're not actually going outwardly and being like, oh, I need help. Most people just retreat. So by not giving the rest that we need, that typically is what tends to happen. And it's really sad. I've noticed an uptick in basically rhetoric that constantly talks about how you should be enough for yourself. So, like, if we're looking at self improvement, self love, all that stuff, they always say how you should, like, be enough for yourself. You should be able to, like, fulfill your own needs and all that stuff, which I agree with. I agree with to a certain extent. Because at the end of the day, we're humans. And one thing that really sets us apart from any other creature on this planet is that we are social creatures. We need human interaction. We need human connection. We need each other. If we go back to, I don't know, before civilization or whatever, right? Hunter gatherer days, our survival literally relied on the fact that people liked us and that we were part of a society, we were part of a group, we were part of something. We cannot expect to survive on our own. And I think this rhetoric that's just so divisive and that pits everyone against each other or just makes it sound like you should really work on yourself to the point that you don't need anyone. Yes, you should. You should be able to satisfy all those things for yourself. But at the same time, like, we need that human connection. That's part of how we're hardwired. That's part of who we are. We can't just forego that. And I think a lot of people in doing so, trying to be like, you know what? I don't need friends. Like, I'm fine. Or like just isolating themselves. It has like really bad consequences. That's why, like, even when you see prisoners that are being put on solitary confinement, that's where a lot of them go crazy, right? When you look at it, being isolated and by yourself 24/7 is not good. It's not a good thing at all. That is not something we should strive for. We should strive for connection. We should strive to be better people so we can show up better for the people in our lives as well as for ourselves. But I think this is what it comes down to is that we're just so lonely because of everything that's going around us, but also how society is not, it's almost like they're not prioritizing human connection. They're prioritizing everything above that. they're prioritizing capitalism and just production and consumption over human connection. And while obviously making money and having things is great, that's not the full human experience. Like a huge chunk of the human experience is the connection. So I think our society should really like take heed and actually put into place measures that are going to fight loneliness, measures that are going to help people with their mental health, measures that are going to bring people together, that are going to form communities, and not just in a superficial way, but in a way that actually brings us all together, genuinely makes us bond. And that is something I think is truly necessary. So thank you so much for listening to my video. I hope you learned something. I hope you resonated with something that I said. If you did, please, I would love to hear your comments in the comment section down below. Please don't forget to like and to subscribe and leave your comment down below. I can't wait to read them all. Thank you so much once again and have a great rest of your day. Bye.